Warriors' biggest acquisition, obviously, over the last month was Chris Paul, the draft day trade that sent Jordan Poole, Patrick Baldwin Jr., and Ryan Rollins to the Washington Wizards. Look, my initial reaction to it, I was a little bit pessimistic simply because the optics of giving up a 24-year-old young, explosive guard who has shown the capacity to be a key member of a championship team. And also, despite a turbulent year last season, let's not forget, Poole did average over 20 points during the regular season. So to give that up for a 38-year-old Chris Paul was a little bit negative for me to begin with. However, the more I analyze it, the more I dive into it, the more I can see why the Warriors have done this from an on-court aspect in terms of what Chris Paul can give them next season as opposed to what Jordan Poole would have. Make no mistake, this is an off-court move more than anything to open up the financial flexibility. You get off a guy who was on a 4-year, $128 million contract, and you bring in a guy who is on 1 year, $30.8 million and has a non-guaranteed $30 million the following season, which Chris Paul would have to win Sixth Man of the Year, and he would have to help lead the Warriors to another title, I think, in order to be able to get that $30 million contract in 2024-25. Otherwise, the Warriors will waive him, and they will either try and negotiate a new contract with him, or they will let him walk in free agency. That is as simple as that. I'd be shocked if they keep Chris Paul around on $30 million in the 2024-25 season. In terms of the on-court aspect, though, for Chris Paul, clearly the biggest dynamic here is going to be the differing play styles between the Golden State Warriors and what they've done over the last decade under Steve Kerr, as opposed to Chris Paul and the heavy pick-and-roll style that he plays. Now, a lot of people have kind of said, well, he's going to be running the second unit, he's going to be the sixth man, he's going to have control of that, and therefore they can just play two different styles. No, that's not how it works. This is a team, one team, not two separate teams. This is one team. And so for me, Chris Paul is going to have to delve into the Warrior style, the faster pace, high motion offense of the Warriors, but also the Warriors and Steve Kerr will have to ingratiate a little bit more pick and roll style that Chris Paul runs into the offense as well. So it's to work effectively. There's going to have to be a meeting in the middle of the various styles, because asking the team as a whole to play two different styles depending on if Chris Paul's on the floor or not is just stupid. Like it is. Like Jonathan Kuminga's having a hard enough time trying to pick up the Warrior style of basketball, let alone saying to him, oh, when Chris Paul's out there, you play this style, and when everyone else is out there and you're with Steph Curry, you play this. That's not tenable. Like, you have to meet in the middle somewhere between the differing styles. What I do have optimism about, though, is the fact that I think Chris Paul's shown an ability to be adaptable throughout his whole career. And yes, he plays a certain kind of way, but I think that is malleable enough within any kind of offense. And he spoke today about the fact that it's not brain surgery, it's basketball. And he knows basketball. And I think his experience and what he's been through throughout his career, there is optimism there that he will be able to fit into more of a Warrior-style basketball. I think the biggest thing about this from an on-court perspective is just the kind of safety net that Chris Paul brings the Warriors, rather than the up and down turbulent style of Jordan Poole, which could net you 30 points on any given night, but could also net you a 10-point, 3 for 15 shooting night with 6 turnovers. Chris Paul is going to be a lot more consistent. There's no doubt about that. And I think there's a safety net there that he gives the Warriors, so they're not going to be forced into a situation like they were last season where their bench flat out stunk and they needed Draymond Green to come in and be that safety net, to be that experienced leader, to play alongside Jordan Poole. They're not going to need that now with Chris Paul there. The other thing about Chris Paul, he has made every single team that he has joined better immediately. That includes the 2019-20 Oklahoma City Thunder, who had a better record with him and a young brass around him with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander leading that. They had a better record in that season than the season before, when they were led by Russell Westbrook and Paul George, who were all-stars. So Chris Paul, his ability to make teams better straight away. The Phoenix Suns, sure, they had a great finish in the bubble in Orlando in that same season, but they immediately became a finals team once Chris Paul entered the fold. Now, he's not going to have the same responsibility and necessarily the same impact on the Warriors as he did those teams simply because he's not going to have the opportunity to. Like, he's coming in as I think he will be the sixth man. I think he has to be the sixth man. He's probably going to play 25 minutes. He's not going to be your lead point guard, primary playmaker that's playing 30 to 35 minutes a game. He's not going to be that. However, I think his track record of making every team better that he's ever been on, I think at this point, 18 years into his career, we need to have that's valid. That is a valid point that I think is worth discussing and worth pointing out when you are thinking of why this Chris Paul move to the Warriors will actually work come next season. And I think that's important to acknowledge that this guy, even though he's never won an NBA championship, he is a winner. Like, he is a winner. He, as I said, and I can't overstate the point enough, every team he has been to, he has made better straight away. Looking at last season from the Phoenix Suns, there's a few elements there that I think can transition to the Warriors, which again is provides an optimistic outlook. So he averaged 4.4 three-point attempts last season, which was his highest since the 2018-19 season with that Houston Rockets team next to James Harden, who put up threes after threes after threes. And really, I mean, if we say the Warriors revolutionized the game with the three-point shot, I think the Rockets were just as much a part of that as well in that era with Harden and then those couple of years with CP as well. He shot 37.5% from three last season. That's solid enough, for sure. 55.1% of his three-point attempts last season were assisted, so they were catch-and-shoot attempts. That was his highest since the 2008-09 season. So, again, the adaptability of Chris Paul, I think, there's a lot more adaptability there than what some people, I think, give him credit for. That is for sure. But Chris Paul, I think he can come in. I think I said before about sixth man of the year. I think he can be sixth man of the year if he stays fit and healthy, which is not going to necessarily be the be-all and end-all in the regular season. It's about getting Chris Paul healthy at the right time of the year come the playoffs, which he hasn't been able to do in previous seasons. Again, he's not going to be asked to play 30, 35 minutes a game. He's going to be asked to play 20, 25 spot role. I'm looking forward to him playing alongside Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. I think it will work. The more I think about it, the more I think it will work. Is there still a chance that he gets traded maybe even before the season starts and the Warriors say, no, we don't want another guard there. We want to get a player, an OG Anunoby type or a wing forward kind of thing that would better fit our needs. Maybe there's a chance of that still happening, but from everything we're hearing, Chris Paul is a Golden State Warrior, will be a Warrior next season. They're going to try this out. And I think it's going to be more effective than, say, when they brought in D'Angelo Russell and they were all like, oh, yeah, this will work. This Steph D'Lo combination will work, and then we'll get Klay back from injury and we'll have the three of them. That was never going to work, never did work. D'Lo was sent away to the Timberwolves halfway through the season. I think this has got a lot more chance of working with Chris Paul in place than what we're seeing with D'Angelo Russell. And I think in the short term, he's actually going to provide a better impact than Jordan Poole would have. Again, it just comes down to that safety net of knowing what you're going to get. And when you're in title contention, I think you really want that consistency and that experience brought to the floor rather than a young guy who's up and down like a yo-yo who could give you anything between 10 and 30 points. It's a bold move, there's no doubt about that, but I think ultimately it is the right move, not only for their chances to win next season, but to obviously open up financial flexibility moving forward.